Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu comes calling to Washington, which has just been hit by a political ticking time bomb after the withdrawal of President Joe Biden as his party's nominee in the upcoming presidential election. President Biden, who announced the end of his re-election bid, which was timed with the eve of Netanyahu's arrival. This could also mark a pivotal moment in Israel's war against Hamas and the White House's rather troubled relationship with Netanyahu since this war began. Biden has been blowing hot and blowing cold at his old friend BIBI, at once championing Israel's right to defend itself and wage war against Hamas, and at the same time chiding Netanyahu for targeting civilians. Immediately after Biden's announcement, a person familiar with deliberations in Netanyahu's office said it was too early to say how this trip might be affected. Netanyahu is scheduled to address a joint meeting of the US Congress this week, but it is the chaos of the presidential race that has taken over events in Washington. How the fast-shifting political winds in America could embolden Benjamin Netanyahu at a crucial time in the ceasefire negotiations. How Biden's withdrawal could be the final blow in any potential ceasefire deal. US-backed talks in Cairo are reportedly gaining momentum, with the administration pressing a reluctant Netanyahu to accept a deal that would end the fighting in exchange for release of more than 100 Israeli hostages. Netanyahu has been accused by critics of prolonging this war for his own political benefit. That is a charge that he denies. He remains adamant that Israel must fight until Hamas has been destroyed. Now, that is a goal that his own generals have said is pretty much unachievable. Officially, Netanyahu is neutral in American politics, but he has long been criticized for aligning himself with the Republicans. He's made no secret of his delight with Donald Trump, who tilted US foreign policy significantly in favor of the Israeli right during his term as president. Trump moved the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He also recognized Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights. Netanyahu's tense relationship with Biden has deteriorated greatly in recent months. Israel has defied numerous White House appeals to increase the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza and to do more to protect civilians. The administration put on hold 2,000-pound bombs that it was supposed to sell to Israel back in May because of their use in populated areas. More than 38,000 Palestinians have been killed in this war, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. A majority of the dead are women and children. Some of Netanyahu's allies had begun cheering Donald Trump more explicitly, framing the ceasefire talks as a partisan issue. Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's Netanyahu's far-right national security minister and on whose party Netanyahu's coalition depends, warned colleagues last week that approving a hostage deal would be a slap for Trump and would be a victory for Biden. Any agreement, he insisted, should wait until November. Some political observers say that Biden's eroding position in recent weeks has already begun to free Netanyahu's hand in Gaza. Michael Oren is a former Israeli ambassador to Washington. He says US pressure on Israel to rein in its military campaign has significantly eased in recent weeks. The administration has offered little public criticism of the escalating attacks you're seeing in areas that are packed with civilians, including the one last week of Mawasi, which is an area designated by Israel as a humanitarian zone. Massive strikes in Mawasi and surrounding regions last week targeting senior Hamas leader Mohammed Deif killed at least 90 people. And there is no confirmation yet, a week on whether the intended target, Deif, has survived or perished in these attacks. Biden's team has backed off in part because of signs that the attacks are making Hamas more amenable to a deal. And because what the president really needs right now is a diplomatic win, showing that he can achieve big things internationally before he demits office in January next year. The president's mounting problems have coincided with a hardening of the prime minister's position. Netanyahu recently came forward with last-minute demands that could stymie the talks that are happening in Cairo. Under these new conditions, Israel would not agree to withdraw its forces from the Philadelphia corridor that's along the Egyptian border. Israel would also not allow unrestricted access for Gazans who are seeking to return to their homes in the north. Israel insists that its forces be permitted to establish checkpoints to monitor the movement of the displaced. The fact that Netanyahu put these conditions out so publicly means that he feels more confident. Netanyahu was certainly paying close attention to the churning within the US political campaign. Everyone recognizes that Biden is weak, and right now a weak Biden is good for a strong BIBI. Netanyahu was far more focused on his own political challenges domestically. The Prime Minister is squeezed between the Israeli public, who are increasingly angry at his failure to reach a hostage deal, and then there are his far right-wing coalition partners who are threatening to bring down the government if he agrees to stop fighting. 8 members of Netanyahu's Likud party, which is his own political party, went public in recent days with a list of red lines that they could not support in any deal. And that includes Israel's withdrawal from central Gaza and its withdrawal from the Egyptian border. Netanyahu will be feverishly working to keep his coalition partners in line until at least the 28th of July, when Israel's parliament begins a 3-month recess. So the next few weeks are going to be crucial. Right now, the pressure on the Israeli government is far more from inside than the pressure that is from outside. Before Biden's move, Netanyahu had no plans to seek a meeting with Donald Trump while he was visiting Washington, or even with Vice President Harris, whom Biden quickly endorsed to take his place at the top of the ticket. The Prime Minister was fully aware that no matter the outcome of the election in November, Israel would be dealing with Biden for at least the remainder of this term. Netanyahu is likely to be on his best bipartisan behavior during this visit, unlike his controversial address to the US Congress back in 2015. At that time, at the invitation of the Republicans, Netanyahu had slammed Barack Obama's Iran nuclear deal. Unlike now, that dust-up occurred just weeks before an Israeli election and was designated for domestic political consumption. It's a totally different situation now. Netanyahu needs President Biden every single day, at least in November, perhaps even till January when he demits office. While many Democrats remain bitter over Netanyahu's 2015 trip, and scores of them plan on boycotting his address, Netanyahu will be in Washington at the peak of partisan frenzy. Between the two-party conventions, Republican and Democrat, the Democrats will also be scrambling to figure out their next steps as to who will replace Joe Biden. US officials confided that they were nervous about Netanyahu's visit at such a volatile time. They were worried that he may say or do something that scuttles weeks of hard-fought diplomacy.